These are the most interesting vintage photos and unusual objects from the past. Let's get 100,000 subscribers. American racer Elfriede Maes performs a trick by punching a wooden wall at high speed. The picture was taken at a stadium in New York in 1933. The 1979 playing cards issued to US Army soldiers contained silhouettes of Soviet aircraft. They were used as a visual aid for identifying enemy aircraft and helicopters. A family of American pioneers near their dugout house on the frontier, the end of the 19th century. Such buildings were typical for the first settlers in regions with a shortage of wood and building materials. A group of women demonstrate various types of protective masks and helmets as part of a labor protection campaign. The picture was taken in the USA in 1940. US President Richard Nixon and his family are meeting with actor Clint Eastwood. The photo was taken in 1969. Actress Raquel Welch, recognized as one of the main sex symbols of the 1970s. Her images in movies and photo shoots have cemented her cult status in pop culture. In 1932, sunglasses with a separate nose shield were developed. This design protected the skin of the nose from sunburn and ultraviolet radiation. Construction of the battleship Rei Don Luigi de Portugallo at the William Henry Webb Shipyard in New York, 1863. By this time, Webb's company had designed and built 133 ships, becoming the largest in the United States. Unemployed men are sitting on the docks of New York at the height of the Great Depression. The picture was taken in 1934. An African-American girl and her grandmother look at a shop window in Mobile, Alabama. The photo was taken in 1956. Sergeant Nathaniel Morgan removes a piglet from a protective container after a nuclear explosion test. The photo was taken at the Nevada Training Ground in 1957. The catalogue of the De Moulin Brothers Company & Co., 1920s, which offered an altar for swearing with elements of prank. When activated, a skeleton with illuminated eyes popped out of the altar. A blank shot was fired, water splashed into the face, and an electric discharge was applied to the knees. The pyrophone is a musical instrument invented in 1875 by the French physicist Georg Friedrich Eugen Kastner. The sound was created by the flame of hydrogen in glass pipes, which made the instrument extremely dangerous and led to its explosion at one of the first concerts. The Dongan Hills ferry transports passengers between Staten Island and Manhattan. There are separate areas for men and women on board. The picture was taken in New York in 1945. The Philips Beauty set was released in 1972 and was designed for hair and skin care. The kit included an electric trimmer and various attachments for styling and manicure. Alcatraz Prison's Christmas menu includes baked turkey with oysters, potatoes, pumpkin pie, and fruitcake. The menu was accompanied by a festive program with Christmas carols and a film screening. A street stall in New York City sells pineapple and orange juice for 5 cents per glass. The photo was taken in July 1932. Ella Fitzgerald and Louis Armstrong recorded an album together at Verve Records in 1956. Their collaboration began with the project Ella and Louis, which became a jazz classic. Armstrong played the trumpet and sang, and Fitzgerald complimented him with her unique vocals. Women type on typewriters in the office of the National Cash Register Company in Dayton, Ohio, 1902. NCR was the largest manufacturer of cash registers in the world. The long rows of jobs reflect the early principles of mass labor organization. An antique floor fan was used in funeral homes to repel insects and reduce the smell of corpses. It was often equipped with lanterns on the sides to illuminate the coffin. Cowboys cook and eat food at a camping kitchen while camping at Camp Hemsworth, Texas. The picture was taken in 1900 during one of the cattle raids. The chuck wagon served as a mobile kitchen and a place to store supplies on the road. The Grand Review of the Army's parade was held in Washington on May 23-24, 1865, in honor of the Union victory in the Civil War. On the first day, 80,000 soldiers of the Army of the Potomac marched. On the second, 65,000 soldiers of the armies of Tennessee and Georgia. General Ulysses Grant and President Andrew Johnson were on the podium. The crowd in front of the Warner Theatre in New York before the premiere of the film Don Juan, starring John Barrymore. The screening took place on August 6, 1926, and became the first full-length film with the Vitaphone system for sound and music synchronization. Women buy candy at Mrs. Snyder's store on South Michigan Avenue in Chicago. The photo was taken in 1927, during the heyday of the candy industry in the USA. Women's wrestling, mid-20th century. The moment of a painful reception in the ring in front of a full arena. The show combined wrestling and staged elements. Sybil Shepherd is an American actress and model. In 1968, she received the title of Model of the Year. The photo was taken in the 1960s at the beginning of her career. An underwater volcanic eruption off the coast of Japan forms a new island. Steam and ash emissions rise hundreds of meters above the ocean surface. A luxurious hearse carriage decorated with sculptures of angels and carvings was used to transport the coffin. It was made in the early 19th century and harnessed by horses. A man demonstrates an early experimental Alexander Graham Bell phone. The device uses horns to transmit and receive sound through a wired connection. US President Calvin Coolidge stands with representatives of the Osage Nation in traditional dress and costumes. The meeting took place during his presidency in the 1920s. A law enforcement officer breaks a keg of beer during Prohibition in the United States. Similar raids were carried out to destroy illegal alcohol in 1920-1933. A bronze Mughal cannon made in the 18th century. The gun was designed to fire several balls at the same time and is now kept in a museum in India. A caravan of settlers is moving along the Oregon Highway in covered wagons. This route led from Missouri to the Pacific coast and was used in the middle of the 19th century for mass migration to the west. Street organ grinders in the USA, the beginning of the 20th century. A man carries a hurdy-gurdy on a belt. A woman collects money from passers-by. Such performers were popular in cities as a form of street entertainment. A tanker services a car at a Chevron station in the USA. An advertising banner about the new high-octane gasoline indicates the year 1957. The fuel price is 26.9 cents per gallon. Soldiers of the 25th Infantry Bicycle Corps of the U.S. Army pose against the backdrop of the terraces of Yellowstone National Park. This is the only full-fledged military bicycle unit in the history of the United States, formed in 1897. Multnomah Falls in the Columbia River Gorge, Oregon. The photo was taken in 1918 with a car in the foreground with an inscription about a tourist route. A couple with their young son is watching a movie in a movie theatre, sitting in their 1941 Buick. They have a big can of popcorn, a popular movie treat of the time. US President Richard Nixon, during an official visit to China in 1972, learns the use of traditional Chinese chopsticks. A large residential trailer attached to a Ford F-Series pickup truck is parked in an open area near San Francisco, California, June 1959. These trailer models were popular in post-war America among travel and camping enthusiasts, offering comfort on the road. Ford F-Series pickups were often used for towing because of their power and reliability. First aid training for burns with full-body bandaging, Springfield, 1930s. Similar exercises were conducted to prepare rescuers and workers for industrial emergencies. The mannequin or volunteer was completely wrapped in bandages to practice techniques to protect damaged skin. A street vendor in a wheelchair, early 20th century. He earns money by selling small items to passers-by on a busy city street. Airfield in Grand Rapids, Michigan, 1952. In the foreground, an officer and a civilian near a US Army training aircraft against the background of the control tower. Two bomber sergeants, J. Dickinson from Canada and F. Gilkes from Trinidad, are joking while waiting to board a plane for a raid on Hamburg, Great Britain, 1943. A mannequin in the form of a metal skull with a movable jaw used to train dentists in the early 20th century. His realistic form made it possible to practice treatment techniques, and his appearance made such workouts a test not only for skills, but also for nerves. Installation of a giant King Kong model at the Empire State Building in New York, dedicated to the 50th anniversary of the release of the first film about the monster. The installation took place on April 14, 1983, and became one of the most notable actions in the history of the building. Customers in a New York record store, 1957. Visitors listened to new items on individual players before buying, which was a popular practice at the time. A male colonist cooks dinner at his home on the Great Plains, 1886. There are primitive kitchen utensils on the table, typical of the life of the pioneers. The Circus Elephant Parade in Washington Park, Albany, circa 1880. The animals are marching along the pavement, accompanied by handlers and children. Laying of a cable line for streetcars in Union Square, New York, 1891. Workers are installing the drive mechanisms that will move the cable cars. The exploding pie table from Desmoulins Brothers & Co., USA, late 19th, early 20th century. The participants, with their hands behind their backs, competed in eating the pie, but in the process the table was triggered. There was a loud bang, and the pies were thrown right into the players' faces. The device was sold in the catalogue for $32. Scientists present the cosmonaut dog Strelka and her litter of puppies at a press conference at the USSR Academy of Sciences, Moscow, 1961. Strelka had previously made a successful orbital flight on the Sputnik V spacecraft together with a squirrel dog. Selection of beauty contest participants by representatives of the Komsomol District Committee, USSR, 1988. Such contests became possible during the period of perestroika, when cultural restrictions began to weaken. Marilyn Monroe in line for a hot dog on a New York street, 1957. The picture reflects an everyday moment in the life of the actress at the peak of her popularity. Mstislav Rostropovich, Isaac Stern, and Gregory Peck met at a charity concert in San Francisco in 1990. Rostropovich took to the stage in a tutu, causing a storm of laughter from the audience. This performance became one of the most memorable scenes of the evening. A horsewater ferry ship in the USA, circa 1900. Two horses inside powered the rowing mechanism through a system of gears. Such transport was used to ferry people and goods across rivers before the advent of motor engines. Bill and Hillary Clinton were married on October 11, 1975 in Fayetteville, Arkansas. The ceremony took place in their own home, attended only by close friends and relatives. This photo captured them in the first minutes after the wedding. This photo captures young Daniel Radcliffe and Rupert Grint on their first day of dating. The moment happened before the filming of the first Harry Potter film began. Subsequently, their on-screen friendship turned into a real one. Johnny Depp poses with a Super Soaker CPS 2000 toy blaster on the set of the movie Sleepy Hollow, 1999. The photo was taken during a break between takes. The film became one of the most recognizable works of the actor in collaboration with Tim Burton. On January 13, 1968, Johnny Cash gave a legendary concert at Folsom Prison, California. The performance was recorded and released as the album. at Folsom Prison, which became one of the most famous of his career. This concert cemented Cash's status as a performer close to ordinary people and outsiders of society. MacLeod's cabin was located in Happy Hollow, near Hot Springs, Arkansas. A photo from 1901 captured a hunter with a gun and the carcass of a large deer in front of his home. The place served not only as a house, but also as a hunting base in a remote forest. Chinatown, San Francisco, 1898. Photographer Arnold Genthy captured Ross Alley Street, known as Gamblers Street, where dens and gambling houses were located. The area was built in 1849 and quickly gained a reputation as an underground entertainment center. September 16, 1893, Oklahoma. The opening of the Cherokee site became the largest land race in the history of the United States, when thousands of people on horseback and in wagons rushed to occupy the land. Haste, lax controls, and fraud led to chaos, injuries, and deaths. 1892, New York. Students in a carpentry lesson as part of the manual labour movement, popular since the 1870s. Such classes developed coordination, observation, and skills in working with wood and metal. The Alvin Conklin Planning Workshop on Richmond Terrace in Port Richmond, Staten Island, specialised in sawing, planing, and manufacturing wooden parts. Later, the building became known as Farrell Lumber, but today the company is already closed. June 7, 1943. American actor Clark Gable, who served as a shooting instructor in the United States Air Force, poses with a machine gun on board an airplane in England. 1904. Irrigation canal east of Cozad, Nebraska, built to irrigate the farmlands of the Great Plains. In the photo, a worker sits on a dam with a shovel, controlling the water supply. On August 7, 1974, French tightrope walker Philippe Petit walked along a cable between the towers of the World Trade Center in New York at an altitude of 417 meters. The transition lasted about 45 minutes and became one of the most famous stunts in history. On August 23, 1939, the Non-Aggression Pact between the USSR and Germany, known as the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, was signed in Moscow. The agreement provided for mutual renunciation of aggression and had a secret protocol on the division of spheres of influence in Eastern Europe. In November 1920, after the defeat in the Civil War, the Russian army of General Peter Wrangel began to evacuate the Crimea. The photo shows the loading of soldiers and refugees in Sevastopol onto ships that sailed to Constantinople and other ports, saving tens of thousands of people from repression. A black bear cub sits on its hind legs by the curb and reaches for the car window, waiting for a treat. Such scenes were not uncommon in the 1960s, when tourists in national parks often fed wild animals directly from the road. The photo shows little Angelina Jolie with her older brother James Haven. The picture was taken in the childhood of the future actress, long before her world fame. Jackie Chan poses on a slope near the famous Hollywood sign. The picture was taken during his entry into the American film market, when the actor was actively promoting his career in Hollywood. Abandoned car parking in Chernobyl, 1987. The cars were abandoned after the evacuation of the residents of the exclusion zone, as the vehicles involved in the removal of people had received significant radioactive contamination and were not subject to further operation. France, the 1920s. A nurse conducts an ultraviolet irradiation session for infants to prevent rickets caused by vitamin D deficiency. Children are protected by special glasses to prevent eye damage. The USSR, the 1970s. The Soviet cyberneticist is at the center of an experimental complex with computers and automation systems used for scientific research. Toronto, 1937. The two girls were the first to appear in public in short shorts, showing off their exposed legs. This act caused shock and heated discussion among the townspeople. Swedish writer and activist Elin Wagner stands next to the collected signatures for a petition for women's suffrage. The total volume was 351,154 signatures, designed in the form of an impressive wall of bound volumes. Sweden, 1914. At the end of the 19th century, organ and piano master Henry Studley created a unique box containing 300 carpentry tools, each with an individual attachment. The construction is made of piano waste products, black, red and rosewood, mother of pearl and ivory. NASA astronauts relax in zero gravity aboard the Space Shuttle Challenger during the 1983 mission. One of them is fixed in an upright position upside down. The other is floating in the air with his eyes closed and arms crossed. Actors Mickey Rourke and Johnny Depp together at an event in Los Angeles in 1994. Their friendship at that time was widely known in Hollywood circles. Sylvester Stallone in Malibu, California, 1979. The actor is pictured walking in swimming trunks with a Sunday newspaper in his hands. Jean-Claude Van Damme competes at the European Amateur Bodybuilding Championships in 1978. The athlete demonstrates the splits and prominent muscles, attracting the attention of the judges and the audience. Marlon Brando and Marilyn Monroe pose with a ticket to the Broadway production of The Rose Tattoo. The picture reflects their friendly communication and a rare moment of appearing together in front of the camera. Leslie Nielsen and his wife at home in Hollywood Hills, Los Angeles, 1992. The actor is jokingly playing golf, standing on the dining table while his wife is calmly reading a magazine. An electric egg-boiling appliance that is almost 60 years old. The device is designed to cook 5 eggs at the same time and continues to work properly decades later. British designer Mary Quant, known as the creator of the miniskirt, poses with her models. Her first mini collection was presented in 1962 and became a symbol of the fashion revolution of the 1960s. A joint photo shoot of leading bodybuilders in 1970. In the picture, Arnold Schwarzenegger is on the right, Frank Zane is on the left, Dave Draper is in the center with a board, and Betty Brosma, Vader, is next to him, surrounded by her friends. A Pacific Southwest Airlines flight attendant poses inside the turbine of a passenger plane. Photo shoots in branded uniforms were part of the airline's image campaign in the 1960s and 1970s. A policeman of the GDR stands against the background of a concrete wall being erected on Bernauer Strasse. The photo was taken on October 7, 1961, during the period of active construction of the Berlin Wall. Antique mechanical toaster with rotary bread holders. The design allows you to toast the slices on both sides by turning them without removing them from the appliance. Rosa Parks, a civil rights activist in the United States, known for refusing to give way to a white passenger on a Montgomery bus on December 1, 1955. This act became a key event in the fight against racial segregation and led to her arrest. Princess Elizabeth, the future Queen of Great Britain, at Westminster Abbey in 1937. The picture was taken during the coronation of her father, King George VI. Che Guevara with his wife Aleida March and their 4 children. The picture captures a famous revolutionary's family moment outside the political environment. Emperor Hirohito of Japan next to a man in a Mickey Mouse costume. The visit became a symbol of cultural exchange and a change in relations between Japan and the United States decades after the Second World War. Queen Elizabeth II inspects the Iron Throne during a visit to the set of the TV series Game of Thrones in Belfast, Northern Ireland in 2014. Employees of the Ellis Research Laboratory are testing a motorcycle helmet by dropping a steel ball on it. The test was conducted in 1957 to evaluate the strength and effectiveness of protection. Pelé and Bobby Moore exchanged jerseys after the match between Brazil and England at the 1970 World Cup. The gesture became a symbol of mutual respect between the legendary captains. A veteran of the Great Patriotic War bent over the T-34 tank, which he fought in during the war. There are flowers on the armour in memory of the comrades in arms. A cartoonist works at his studio in Provincetown, Massachusetts, 1936. The building is decorated with examples of his work and advertisements for portraits in pastels. Winter fishing in Michigan, 1955. Two men are fishing directly from the interior of a car parked on a frozen lake. A military rabbi of the German army in a 1910s uniform. On his chest hangs a large Star of David with the symbol of the Tablets of the Covenant. Rabbis of this rank accompanied the troops, conducted religious services, and provided spiritual support to Jewish soldiers. Victor Emery, winner of the St. Petersburg Moscow Motor Rally in 1908, poses in his car against the background of the Tsar cannon in the Moscow Kremlin. The competition was one of the first significant motorsport events in Russia. Nelson Mandela in 1953, when he was working as a young lawyer in Johannesburg. During this period, he actively defended the rights of the black population of South Africa under apartheid. The photo reflects the beginning of his socio-political activity. A mechanical gun for baking and decorating confectionery products with a set of interchangeable nozzles. It is intended for forming cookies, gingerbread, and decorations from dough or cream. Allows you to create different shapes and patterns thanks to the nozzles with different cutouts. Elvis Presley at a concert in Asheville, North Carolina on July 23, 1975. The singer performs in a brightly embroidered suit with a massive belt and jewelry typical of his late-stage style. An ice cream vendor serves children from a cart on the street, 1918. Mobile trade was a common phenomenon in cities of the early 20th century. The picture was captured at the height of the popularity of street sweets. Sophia Loren, 15 years old, participates in the Miss Italy pageant in 1950. In this competition, she won the title of Miss Elegance. The event marked the beginning of her journey to world cinematic fame. British actress Barbara Windsor and drama school student Patricia Stark at the Water Trough Water Attraction at Battersea Festival Gardens, London, England, 1955. The picture captured the moment of the descent with splashes during the fair. Frank Sinatra sits on a suitcase waiting for a train, 1958. The picture was taken on a deserted railway platform. A pair of decorative hand fans with floral and insect ornaments. They were used by women of the 19th century to protect their faces from the sun and preserve the pallor of their skin. They are made of wood and metal, decorated with paintings. A baseball match between the Boston Red Sox and Detroit Tigers, 1910. The game attracted a huge number of spectators, many of whom watched what was happening right from the field outside the playing area. East Berlin, 1963. The picture shows ruins and wastelands left after the destruction of the Second World War. The rebuilding of the city was slow, and traces of the fighting persisted almost 2 decades later. Ernest Hemingway in the trenches during the Spanish Civil War, 1930s. The writer worked as a war correspondent and was on the front line with the Republican troops. Einar Mikkelsen, Danish polar explorer, born in 1912. He spent 2.5 years in isolation in Greenland with Ivar Iversen. He survived hunger, harsh winters, and mental ordeals until his rescue. June 28, 1880, Glenrowan, Australia. Capture of Ned Kelly. His homemade steel armour weighed over 40 kilos and withstood dozens of hits. The design has aroused the interest of military engineers around the world. Lana Turner on the set of the movie The Postman Always Rings Twice, 1946. The film became one of Hollywood's most scandalous neo-noir films, and Turner's image cemented her status as the femme fatale of American cinema. In 1946, Sony's first product was a primitive electric rice cooker. It consisted of a wooden bucket with a heating element at the bottom. The device did not have an automatic shutdown and required constant monitoring during cooking. In 1967, a year before moving to the United States, Arnold Schwarzenegger attended the Oktoberfest in Munich. The photo shows him with a friend in an informal setting, with beer mugs in his hands. This period became for him a time of active preparation for an international career. Activists of the US civil rights movement are practicing methods of psychological resilience before actions. These training sessions mimic the insults and provocations they faced during the sit-ins. The goal was to learn how to remain calm and not respond aggressively to violence. In 1942, survivors of the wreck of the Norwegian ship Armindal drifted on a raft in the Atlantic. The American flying boat PBY Catalina discovered them, but due to the strong waves of the sea, could not land on the water. Shortly after the shooting, the raft sank, and almost everyone on it died. Young couple in Seoul, Korea, 1904. The man is dressed in a traditional hanbok with a gat hat, and the woman is completely covered with a changot veil, hiding her face and figure. This kind of outfit was the norm for married women on the street at the end of the Joseon era. Wooden prosthetic arms and legs from the 1920s, belonging to a house painter who fled Europe during World War II in his youth. The prostheses are made of wood and metal, with leather straps for fixation, and an old photograph of the owner is clutched in the hand. A Catholic identification badge worn around the neck served to identify the believer in the event of an accident. The request to notify the priest is engraved on the back so that the victim can receive the rite of the last anointing. General Douglas MacArthur signs the Act of Surrender of Japan aboard the battleship USS Missouri on September 2, 1945. The ceremony marked the official end of World War II. The event was attended by representatives of the Allied powers and the US High Command. Soldiers of the Eight-Nation Alliance pose in Beijing in 1900 during the suppression of the Yihetuan uprising. The alliance included the United Kingdom, the United States, Australia, British India, Germany, France, Austria, Italy, and Japan. Each soldier is dressed in the national uniform of his army, symbolizing the international union. Pyrene fire extinguisher, probably from the 1930s and 1940s, which used carbon dioxide or a chemical compound to extinguish fires. The body is made of brass, and the product was supplied manually using a pump. Such devices have been used in automobiles, ships, and industrial buildings. Stone cells in Alexandria, Virginia, were used to house slaves before being sold in the mid-19th century. Such premises were often located next to trading houses or markets where auctions were held. The photo dates back to about 1865, shortly after the abolition of slavery in the United States. Militants of the Women's Unit of the Northern Group of the Irish Republican Army conduct a search of a man at a wall with the inscription, "Brits Out." The date and location of the shooting are unknown, but the unit was involved in a number of attacks against British forces in Northern Ireland. A survivor of the crash of the airship Hindenburg on May 6, 1937, smokes a cigarette while being loaded into a transport to be sent to the hospital. An airship caught fire and crashed on landing in Lakehurst, New Jersey, killing 36 people. The Lysenko brothers are a unique case in the history of the Great Patriotic War. All 10 brothers from the same family went to the front, and all returned home alive. Joe Reed performed a record jump on a motorcycle over the destroyed span of the bridge. The trick was listed in the Guinness Book of Records in 1998. The height and range of the jump made him one of the most dangerous motorcycles of the time. In 1913, the Ford plant in Detroit introduced conveyor assembly of cars. This technology has significantly accelerated production and reduced the cost of machines. Ford's method became the basis for the mass car industry around the world. This book of hours was created in the Netherlands around 1440. It is decorated with colourful miniatures, decorative initials, and floral ornaments. Such books were used for personal prayers and reflected the high level of skill of medieval scribes. On February 12, 1973, American prisoners of war leave Hanoi as part of Operation Homecoming. It became part of the Paris Agreements that ended US involvement in the Vietnam War. There is genuine joy on board after years of captivity and hardship. In 1963, Julia Child filmed an episode of her cult TV show, The French Chef. This program was the first culinary program to gain wide popularity in the United States. The filming process required complex coordination of the team hiding behind the scenes. Pat Connolly, an American wrestler of Irish descent, pictured in 1909. His style and equipment reflect the early formative years of professional wrestling in the United States. German soldiers in a trench preparing to attack during the First World War, 1916. One of them is loading a Maxim machine gun, the other is holding a grenade, protected by a gas mask from gas attacks. Such scenes were typical of trench warfare, where chemical weapons and machine guns became symbols of conflict. Halloween, USA, 1925. The costumes include clowns, a witch, a policeman, and characters in black masks. The photo reflects the early tradition of mass masquerade in America at the beginning of the 20th century. Hiroshima, Japan, September 1945. A teacher holds a lesson among the ruins of a city a month after the atomic bombing. Despite the complete destruction, classes for children resumed in the open air. Italian actress Gina Lollobrigida in 1951, at the dawn of her film career. At this time, she began acting actively and quickly became one of the most recognizable European stars. She was considered a symbol of beauty and a rival of Sophia Loren in world cinema. The Iron Mask, a bridle for liars, was used in Europe in the Middle Ages to punish women for gossip and swearing. The design included a metal frame with a plate pressing the tongue, sometimes with spikes that caused pain when moving. The mask was worn in public, turning the punishment into an act of shame and intimidation for others. NASA's OV-18 military satellite was launched in 1966 to study the Earth's reflectivity. Its spherical shell, with a diameter of 3.66 meters, weighed only about 10 kilos. The structure served as part of an experiment to measure solar radiation and atmospheric density. In 1943, the Western Union telecom operator was working on telegraphic equipment for transmitting messages. The devices include electromechanical teletype printers and a control panel with cable connections. This technique was used for fast, long-distance data transmission during the Second World War. In 1963, crates of provisions and equipment for shelters from a nuclear strike were delivered to the monastery. The photo shows boxes marked with US civil defense markings and a fallout shelter sign. Such measures were part of the national program of preparation for a possible attack during the Cold War. The photo shows Princesses Khanzadeh, left, and Neslisha, right, direct descendants of the Ottoman sultans. The picture was taken in 1924, shortly after the abolition of the Sultanate and the expulsion of the dynasty. Both spent their lives in exile, becoming symbols of the end of the Ottoman Empire. A medical simulator for the training of gynecologists, used in the 20th century to teach diagnosis and conduct examinations. It is made of a solid frame and anatomically accurate model of female genitalia. It was used in medical schools and clinics to practice skills without the participation of patients. A handheld facial ventilator manufactured in Western Europe at the beginning of the 20th century. It worked on the principle of scissors. Squeezing the handles through the gears rotated the blades. It was used to cool the face and create a light airflow in hot weather. In 1965, an An-2 Aeroflot aircraft delivered Christmas trees to the remote Jarnagadh State Farm. In a desert area, trees were transported to local residents on camels and horses. Such flights were part of the Soviet program to ensure holidays even in the most inaccessible regions. During the Luftwaffe raids in 1942, kindergartens in London used cupboards as shelters. The shelves were covered with blankets so that the children could safely wait out the alarm. Such measures were a forced adaptation to the lack of a sufficient number of bomb shelters. Australian armoured units used British Universal Carrier tankettes for reconnaissance and infantry support. The picture was taken on January 7, 1941, during the campaign in North Africa against Italian troops. These vehicles were highly manoeuvrable, but had weak armour and armament. Christmas carolers from Goretsky district of Mogilev province, Russian Empire, 1903. Men in traditional winter clothes and bast shoes carry a decorated Christmas star, a symbol of Christmas celebrations and carols. Such rounds of courtyards with songs and blessings were an important part of folk rituals. The Beatles' arrival in New York, 1964, was accompanied by a crowd of greeters with joking and sarcastic posters. Among the inscriptions, "The Beatles starve without hairdressers," and "The Beatles are unfair to bald men." This moment became part of the mass hysteria that accompanied Beatlemania in the United States. A damaged Soviet armoured tractor HTZ-16 at the building of the Central Department Store in Kharkov, 1941. The machine was created on the basis of the STZ-5 track tractor and is armed with a 45mm cannon. In total, about 150 units were produced, which were used for defence in the first months of the Great Patriotic War. A 19th century ballroom notebook was used to record the names of the gentlemen who invited the lady to dance. The pages were made of paper or polished bone, from which the inscriptions were wiped with a damp cloth. Such books were worn on a fan chain or on a belt, often in exquisite bindings made of silver, bone, or leather. A US Army chaplain baptizes a soldier in the fountain of the Caserta Palace in Italy in the spring of 1945. The palace, built in the 18th century, was used by the Allies as a headquarters during the Second World War. The ceremony took place against the background of a sculptural ensemble depicting a scene from mythology. Two women fight in the street in London's East End, 1902. The area at the time was notorious for poverty, crime, and overcrowding. Such street conflicts were common among working-class neighbourhoods. Arrest of a woman by police during a march of the British Union of Fascists in London, 1936. The event took place against the background of clashes between anti-fascist demonstrators and members of the Oswald Mosley movement, becoming one of the symbols of the fierce confrontation between political forces in Britain during the interwar period. Thanksgiving Day Parade in Columbus Circle, New York, 1987. A huge Snoopy balloon in a figure skater costume hovers over the streets, accompanied by columns of artists and orchestras. The Macy's Parade, which has become an annual tradition since 1924, symbolizes the beginning of the holiday season in the United States. The newspaper issue of the Daily Signal, dated November 22, 1963, announced the death of US President John F. Kennedy. He was shot dead in Dallas, Texas, while riding in an open car. This tragic event shocked the country and caused a wave of international condolences. During the renovation of the old church, workers discovered an antique coffin with a small glass window under the floor. Under the layer of dust and dirt, through the cloudy glass, the outlines of a face can be guessed, presumably belonging to a buried person. Such coffins with a window were used in the 19th and early 20th centuries, so that relatives could see the deceased until the final burial. Workers lay a thatched roof on an old house in Devon, England, in 1959. The traditional technology using bundles of straw has been preserved in rural areas of Great Britain for centuries, providing good thermal insulation and protection from rain. 17-year-old Elizabeth Taylor bathes her Cocker Spaniel named Amy, named after her character in the movie Little Women, 1949. The picture captures a rare moment of homely simplicity in the life of a Hollywood star. Vivian Bales, born in 1929, is one of the first famous female motorcyclists in the United States. In the photo, she poses on her Harley-Davidson, demonstrating confidence and independence in an era when motorcycles were considered an exclusively male hobby. Bales travelled long distances across the country, popularising motorsport among women and breaking down gender stereotypes. Greece, 1940. A Greek mother hands her son a small Orthodox icon before he is sent to the front. That year, fascist Italy invaded the country, hoping for a quick victory. This gesture is a symbol of maternal love, faith and hope for protection in a deadly time. USA, 1950s. A little girl learns roller skates and pillows are tied to her waist to protect her from falls. The simple and inventive solution, invented together with my sister, reflects the children's ingenuity and the atmosphere of carefree yard games of the post-war era. About 1,000 years ago, a resident of the island of Gotland kept his work equipment in such a wooden chest. The set included forged knives, axes, hooks, and other metal tools necessary for everyday tasks. These items demonstrate the level of craftsmanship and everyday life of the Viking Age. A group of residents of the parish of Alfta, Sweden, in festive costumes and masks, captured during a local celebration. Such outfits, often strange or frightening in appearance, were part of folk traditions and rituals associated with calendar holidays and winter festivities. Medical orderlies provide assistance to wounded soldiers in a trench during the First World War. One of the soldiers was wounded in the back, the other in the arm, and the third is in a state of concussion. The scene conveys the harsh realities of frontline medicine and the conditions in which field doctors had to work. A cache of artefacts from the middle of the 20th century has been discovered in an abandoned house, a pocket-caliber pistol. With cartridges, matches, campaign and advertising brochures, tobacco mail pouch, a set of dominoes, glass balls, a flask, a golf ball, and old letters. These items provide a rare and honest slice of the life of the past, from guns and gambling to the everyday details that their owner lived decades ago. The April 5th, 1968 issue of the Cincinnati Enquirer newspaper with the tragic news of the assassination of Martin Luther King. The leader of the civil rights movement was shot dead by a sniper in Memphis, causing shock and grief across the country. President Lyndon Johnson has appealed to the nation for restraint to prevent outbreaks of violence amid a national tragedy. Vivien Leigh, Laurence Olivier, and James Stewart at the New York Film Critics Awards in 1940. Three Hollywood legends in the prime of their careers epitomize an era when cinema was the pinnacle of mass art and glamour. An anatomy lesson where students studied the structure of the human skull. Such visual aids were used to get acquainted with the basics of biology and medicine. The leader of the infamous Barker Karpis gang, Alvin Karpis, shows his fingers after trying to change his fingerprints to make identification more difficult. Similar methods were used by criminals in the 1930s, but most often led to painful consequences and only partially distorted the skin pattern. In the spring of 1943, during the Rzhev-Vyazma operation, Soviet troops drove the Germans 160 kilometers from Moscow, liberating Rzhev and Vyazma. During the retreat, the enemy used scorched earth tactics, destroying infrastructure and forcibly abducting residents. In one of the deserted villages, Red Army soldiers found a baby who was carefully fed while waiting for the arrival of paramedics. In 1926, during archaeological excavations in Egypt, workers discovered a massive ancient statue buried in the earth. According to the researchers, it depicts a ruler or a deity, and its age dates back many centuries, if not millennia. Japan, 1910. A samurai in full combat gear with a bow and a quiver of arrows on horseback, next to a gunsmith in traditional costume holding a spear. The scene was filmed during a public demonstration of ancient military traditions. USA, 1928. A special mini notebook attached to your wrist like a wristwatch is designed for crossword puzzle lovers so that you can fill them out on the go. An old family Bible with an embossed leather binding discovered under the floorboards of an abandoned barn near an old house. Such publications often contained family tree records and were passed down from generation to generation. An unusual find in Sweden, a wooden box with the date 1864, inside which lies a mummified figure with a beard and a hat. The attached note says that this dwarf brownie was found in the winter of 1866 inside the wall of an old barn and was already dead at the time of discovery. Russia, 1919. A sledge with a propeller mounted on the stern is an unusual transport of the early 20th century, which made it possible to move through the snow at high speed. Such machines were mainly used for postal service and fast delivery to hard-to-reach areas. Mexico City, circa 1900. Street vendors carry and sell piñatas, traditional figurines filled with sweets that are broken on holidays. Such products were in high demand during religious and family celebrations. The First World War, the Eastern Front. Russian Cossacks and German soldiers celebrate the new year with a truce. They play the drum and teach the enemy to squat. Such episodes of fraternization were rare, but they showed that ordinary soldiers on both sides did not consider each other personal enemies. Chinese locksmith Pai Lim was the only survivor after his cargo ship was torpedoed by a Japanese submarine in the Pacific Ocean. He built a raft with a sail and a canopy from the wreckage, stocked up on food and water, learned how to fish and collect rainwater. After spending 5 months on the raft, he was discovered and rescued. Actors Montgomery Clift and Elizabeth Taylor during the filming of the drama A Place in the Sun, 1951. Their on-screen chemistry made the film one of the iconic films of Hollywood's golden era. In 1921, the United States practiced the transportation of entire houses without disassembly. For this purpose, special platforms and teams of dozens of horses were used to pull the building through the snow-covered streets. This method was cheaper and faster to build a new house, allowing owners to keep their homes when moving. Winter 1942, besieged Leningrad. Residents, risking their lives, reach the aqueduct to collect water under the incessant shelling. Many crawl on the ice to reduce the risk of getting hit by bullets and shrapnel. Others, emboldened, rise to their full height. Even under constant threat, people continued to struggle for survival. Vietnamese opera singers in traditional costumes exit a biplane at the Colonial Exhibition in Paris, 1931. The event was organized to showcase the cultures and achievements of the French colonies. The flight was part of a program representing Vietnam as part of Indochina under French rule. Hungary, 1940. A group of hunters in traditional winter gear with shotguns, preparing to hunt in an open field. Some of them have hunting cartridges on their bandoliers. The picture reflects the pre-war rural life and leisure. Oklahoma, circa 1895. A teacher and students pose in front of a turf school in Woods County. Such buildings were built from dense layers of soil in conditions of wood shortage. The photograph reflects the early history of education on the American frontier. July 14, 1995, Australia. 16-year-old Heath Ledger pictured for an acting portfolio at the beginning of his career. A few years later, he would become one of Hollywood's most famous actors. 1990, filming of the film The Silence of the Lambs. Director Jonathan Demme jokingly feeds Anthony Hopkins French fries in the image of Hannibal Lecter. The film was released in 1991 and won 5 Academy Awards. Marilyn Monroe at the beginning of her career, the early 1940s. In the photo, she also performs under her real name, Norma Jean Mortensen. The picture was taken during the period of her work at the factory and the first photo shoots, before she dyed her hair blonde and created the iconic image that brought her worldwide fame. Elvis Presley during his service in the US Army, 1958. After being drafted in March 1958, he was assigned to the 2nd Armored Battalion of the 3rd Armored Division. He served at Fort Hood, Texas, and later in Germany, refusing the special conditions and benefits available to celebrities in order to serve on an equal basis with other soldiers. Construction of the Golden Gate Bridge, 1933. A Boeing 314 Clipper seaplane flies by against the backdrop of pillars being erected and an unfinished span. Construction of the bridge began in January 1933 and became one of the largest engineering projects of its time, ending in 1937. Construction of a light water boiling reactor, BWR, USA, 1967. The photo shows the construction of the reactor building at the Browns Ferry Nuclear Power Plant in Alabama. This type of reactor uses ordinary water as a moderator and coolant, and its steam is directly supplied to the turbines. Browns Ferry became one of the largest nuclear power plants in the world at the time of launch. Alain Delon and Romy Schneider, early 1960s. The French actor and the Austrian actress met in 1958 on the set of the film Christine, and soon began an affair, becoming one of the most discussed couples in European cinema at that time. German soldiers provide medical assistance to service dogs, 1918. During the First World War, dogs were used to send messages, search for the wounded, and guard positions. Medical care for them was necessary due to the harsh conditions of the front and the high load on the animals. Brigitte Bardot in a London pub, 1968. The French actress and model, who became a symbol of the sexual revolution of the 1960s, poses at the bar during a visit to the UK. During this period, Bardot was at the peak of her popularity, actively acting in films and participating in international social events. Jean-Paul Sartre, Simone de Beauvoir, Pablo Picasso, Albert Camus, and other members of the intellectual and artistic elite of Paris, 1944. They pose in Picasso's studio with his Afghan hound named Kazbek. The picture reflects the atmosphere of France's cultural renaissance in the last months of World War II. Booker Taliaferro Washington in his office at Tuskegee University, 1906. An outstanding educator, speaker, and leader of the African American community in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, he played a key role in the development of the education system for blacks in the United States, promoting the ideas of labor training and economic independence. British soldiers on a train on their way to the Western Front, September the 20th, 1939. The picture was taken shortly after Britain declared war on Nazi Germany. The mood of the fighters, who have not yet experienced the horrors of the front, remains upbeat, which is reflected in their smiles and gestures. Friend, if you like the video even a little bit, please like, subscribe, and write your opinion in the comments.